I didn't want to have a threesome with my boyfriend, he then decided to poison me as punishment. IF29 met my boyfriend, Michael, M35 at a show I performed in. I am a theater person as a hobby, and he complimented my performance and bought me a drink. We have been together now for a little over a year. His sister got married last week and I was initially pleased to be asked to be a bridesmaid but also a bit surprised as she barely knows me, but I thought this was an attempt to have an excuse to also get to know each other better. Michael and I got into an argument the week before because he said that he wanted to entertain the thought of spicing up our intimacy life and having a threesome. He said since I was bi, why not? I didn't like the idea too much and said so, and it devolved into a petty Cold War and he started to ignore my messages after he left my place. He didn't reply to me at all until the day before the wedding asking what time he needed to pick me up since we can't go separate otherwise, people will gossip about us. He barely said anything to me the whole time we traveled to the venue. The wedding was fine, but at the reception he got me a plate and leaned in to kiss me but I shied away and he got up to mingle. I started feeling ill not too long after and 911 was called. I realized I was having an allergic reaction but had my pen but still had to be carted off by the ambulance, and that's when someone who was looking for Michael said that he had left with some of the other groomsmen to a bar nearby. I called 6 times and texted that it was an emergency as I was getting checked up by the paramedics, and again they strongly suggested I go to the hospital but he never replied. I was released by the hospital and called him to ask him to pick me up but he didn't pick up, so I woke up my best friend and she took me home and stayed with me overnight to make sure I was okay. The next morning Michael called me but I was still asleep, so he left me a lengthy voicemail yelling at me that I ruined his sister's wedding and that I always have to make things about me. He came over to further berate me and told me he should just break up with me at this point as I am dramatic and this is all too much. So I pointed out that he had gotten my plate, knew full well that I have an allergy to coconut, and that his sister had told me afterwards that he knew that the cake he gave me was a coconut cream cake as all the food had signs saying what it was and what the ingredients were, as I am not the only person with allergies that attended. He left telling me that he can't talk to me when I am this way. I was honestly exhausted, so I didn't bother going after him. But his father called me to ask how I was doing, and after I answered he then told me how I am hurting Michael's heart by blaming him, and Michael has been inconsolable since we fought. I texted Michael to ask if we could talk, but the conversation went back around somehow to the threesome and how I don't respect him even in intimate settings or want to hear him out regarding his needs and make things about him. I am so confused because to me this feels manipulative, but I respect his father so much. I go to their church and he is a pastor there, so to have him tell me I am in the wrong through me. Michael texted me this morning to apologize. He said the wedding was stressing him out and he had a lot on his mind, so he accidentally handed me the plate he meant for himself, not the one for me. He said he didn't know I was in the hospital and feels bad he wasn't there for me, but he left the reception with some of the groomsmen to blow of much needed steam. I don't know how I feel about it all, so I just replied, okay. He is now asking to come over and talk this out in person. Update 1. Well, many of you were right, I should not have met him in person, but I did. He took me out to lunch insisting he pay for it all, and it was incredibly over the top. He had flowers and a written letter of apology, but as some of you messaged me, his apologies dodged the point by way of, if I hurt you, or, that you're feeling X or Y feeling, etc. He quoted some scriptures and said he has repented as his carelessness caused me harm. I wasn't much moved by any of it until he said how much his family loves me and how much our church roots for us as a couple, and I kinda sat back and realized that one flimsy reason I was even entertaining forgiving him and staying was because of the pressure I dealt with as the girlfriend of a pastor's son. It occurred to me that there were so many times I let things slide because he is the heir apparent, so he had the power in the social aspect of our community. I remember just staring at him and saying it was incredibly alarming that by now he can't be aware of my allergy, and that he didn't bother to tell his own girlfriend he was stepping out with the guys, or even that he was stepping out of his own sister's wedding at all. He then said it was really actually kind of stupid of me to eat a cake that had coconut and implied I am an idiot for not realizing what I had was coconut. I realized then he would never accept that he was in the wrong, and thus there was no point in continuing the discussion. I stood up, smiled and said, "You know what, don't worry about it. Thanks for dinner. Good night." To which he replied that if I wasn't going to grow up and accept his apology, I am a waste of his time. He uses that a lot whenever we disagree, and it usually hurts me deeply, but this time it was like a Rolodex of memories flooded my brain, and I really suspect he's been deliberately making me sick whenever we disagree to teach me a lesson. I said I was done and that he didn't need to waste his time with me from this point on, and left. I then sent screenshots to his father explaining the situation as best I can without blaming Michael for prior illnesses without proof, and I got a text about 20 minutes ago from his father. His father is incredibly disappointed in my immaturity and hurt that I wouldn't even give it until Sunday at church where we can pray together, talk it out and heal. I felt this way for a while, but I was able to say at this time that using religion as a tool of guilt is low, and I am no longer concerned with his version of God, as that version is a judgmental, cruel, and heartless jerk, while the one I always thought of was loving, compassionate, and kind, and I am done. I was told by him and by further emails rolling in that I am no longer welcome at my church until I reconcile with my true husband and learn compassion and respect for my leaders. So I guess that's it. I will enjoy sleeping in tomorrow and eating coconut-free food, while lazing about my home rather than going to 3 Spirit church services starting at 8 a.m. and then figure it all out from there. Update 2. It has been a hot minute. I found a church in my city a bit more laid back, like, we can go to the pub after and have a laugh laid back. I did like it and made amazing friends I am still in touch with, but the going to church idea came from my therapist, and it was to see if I do identify with the church or the ideals of it, and I don't. So now I am back to being the heathen I am, lol. My ex quickly moved on and he had a new girlfriend within a month of us breaking up. Bless that woman, I thought, because she's in for a ride. Oddly enough, she reached out to me on my Facebook and I was curious and opened it. She started with who she is, how long she and ex have been dating and how long they knew each other, childhood friends, so basically forever. She then said that she feels convicted by the Holy Ghost to seek a resolution between me and my ex, and she is worried I may be his true wife. And if I cannot forgive, then I am proving I am not, and to let her know as she cannot marry him until I make this clear. I kid you not. Seeing the screenshots of the chat with my new church buddies, my friends sent vomiting emojis and that this is a cult and not a faith. I concluded they were right and replied with, yeah, marry him if that's what you want. And nothing more. I am getting messages from members of the church, but I don't care much. I've loved my life since leaving. I didn't know life could be so enjoyed really, and it makes me wonder how much damage the church had done on me, but for now, just for fun, I am going to an appointment with a friend of a friend's apprentice on tarot readings. I was asked. No offense to anyone who believes in it, it's just not normally my thing, so I am curious and interested. Maybe it will be good. Update 3. This is really hard to explain. So after my last post, he stayed away for all of a hot second. He kept dropping off gifts and food, effing food, of all things, at my door. I've ignored them and thrown them out at the end of each week like all trash. He then waited out front for me, so when I came out to take the trash out he was sitting right there. I didn't even see him. I was tired and just trying to get chores done. He blocked me from my door and went on a speech about how I am his true wife and that he cannot marry his girlfriend without my permission. I can't keep track of the mental and theological gymnastics he took, but he basically asked me for a threesome with his current girlfriend to see if we can work out who his true wife is. I bluffed and said that my necklace has a panic button on it and the cops are alerted of him being there and to go. He sort of stared at me, but he was blank like he wasn't even human. He went on to say stuff about thinking about me every night before bed and more. I started to gauge just how fast I am compared to him and how quick I would need to run to even wake a neighbor, which one of them would be the quicker to respond, and on and on. I just kept saying no and that the cops would be there and thank the universe for a random siren. I don't know if that's what convinced him, but he did leave and he was sort of chuckling and said that I've always been so playful and called my behavior an act. It took me less than 30 minutes to pack a bag and head to a friend's. I sat in her tub for what felt like a day. It wasn't. When I finally got out, she and I sat down and started making a plan to start moving my things out bit by bit until it's just down to the furniture. I don't give a flying F about the furniture. So we implemented the plan. She would drop in, her dad would, her mom would, I would with her brother, and slowly over this time we took everything I really cared to keep from my home. I'm safe and away from there and just ready to wash my hands of the place. He has texted me a few times assuring me of his plan to pick up his wife. So I finally cracked and sent his messages to his parents last week. It's been silent since then until this past Wednesday. There's a bar I like where they have wine Wednesdays, and I went to just relax until I felt a tap on my shoulder. He was there with what looks like a group, and he starts smiling and says we need to talk. I loudly tell him to leave me alone, but he just drops to his knees and asks me to marry him. Some people start to clap. A regular who knows me is now at my back leaning in to ask if I'm okay. I jerk back and tell him to leave me alone. The regular offered to pay my tab so I can leave and he walked me to my car. Now it's been this game of getting footage, dealing with the police. So far, I'm told, this isn't evidence of harassment but a domestic dispute, so I don't know what to do about that. I know that I am done with where I live, I can't stay here.